What's up? This is Tom Fromling from TwinsDaily.com, and let's talk about the Twins bullpen. This is an off day on Monday. The Twins have only a few more games to kind of line things up, figure out what's going on, because, Taylor Rogers definitely came into the year as the closer. Is he the closer now? Is there a closer? I don't know. Let's talk about it. Let me bring this up. So here is a bunch of stats we have of the Twins bullpen. We're going to go through this, but first, I just want to show you some of the team stats at Fangraphs. We're just going to do a really quick overview. This is if you go to their leaderboard and you go to pitching, hit relievers on the team stats, you can get all this information. So I'm not going to go through this in detail. I just wanted to show you that in case you're interested in digging through it more. But as you can see here, in terms of bullpen ERA, the Twins rank 5th in the league. Very good. And in terms of Fangraphs WAR, the Twins rank 3rd in the league. And something to keep in mind, and this is also, applies to other teams, is this is straight up relievers. So if you had a usual bullpen guy start a game, open a game, whatever you want to call it, that wouldn't be included in these numbers. And the Twins have been pretty successful with that. Just Matt Wisler and Clippard, those two have started 6 games and combined to throw 10 2/3 innings in those games, giving up just 3 hits, 1 earned run. There were 6 walks, all of those from Wisler, but 14 strikeouts in 10 2/3 innings. So that whole bucket of numbers isn't even included in these figures for the Twins. Again, that same concept applies to other teams, especially with the weird 7-inning doubleheaders this year. A lot of teams have used bullpen games or openers or stuff like that. So just wanted to mention that, take that with a grain of salt, basically. But point being, this Twins bullpen statistically is one of the best in baseball, which I think Twins fans, as we have watched this team throughout the season, that's not a big surprise. But if you kind of think about, let's say in terms of like fantasy baseball sexiness, like just raw statistical bewildering power of, you think of the very top nastiest guys in baseball who have strikeout rates in like the 40% range. That's not really the style, or guys who are throwing triple digits all the time. The Twins don't have really that style of relief pitcher. This is a different style bullpen than a lot of other bullpens, and it's very deep. This is a very deep Twins bullpen. The Twins, I think, have more relievers that they can honestly rely on than most other teams in baseball. So let's take a look. I have some numbers here for the guys in the pen, and then some league average numbers down here. You see, league average for relievers this year, 4.45 ERA. The only guy the Twins have above that right now is Rogers, which is kind of funny. We would have never have expected that. And I'm not including some of the long guys like Smeltzer or Thorpe. One of those guys might make the team for the postseason. It wouldn't surprise me, just because with 28-man rosters, there's room for that kind of stuff. But they're only going to be pitching in low leverage situations if they do make it. So I don't know if that's really worth looking into. But flipping this back around the other way, Matt Wisler has a 1.11 ERA. You can see Duffey, Thielbar joining him in under 2 ERAs. Now, if you want to be more positive about Taylor Rogers, who was the only guy, again, who had an above-average ERA for a reliever, his FIP is very good. His fielding independent pitching, very good. 2.84, one of the best on the team, and there isn't a single one of these Twins relievers that's even close to league average FIP, which is 4.44. And another thing about this team in particular, this bullpen, as you can see, Caleb Thielbar is the lowest guy in terms of strikeout minus walk percentage. That's a number I really like in terms of effectiveness. It equalizes things a little bit in terms of, factoring in if a guy gets a ton of strikeouts but then walks a bunch of guys, like Josh Hader's kind of like that. They get dinged a bit on this stat. But still, if you're a huge strikeout guy, you're still going to have a good number. So it doesn't really crush you as bad as maybe strikeout to walk ratio would in that context. But as you can see here, the league average is 13.6. Every single one of these Twins relievers is above league average. And Trevor May is elite in this stat. He is one of the best relief pitchers, qualified relief pitchers in this stat. And again, kind of going with the Rogers talking point, Trevor May has one of the least impressive ERAs on the team. So even the guys who have been struggling in terms of run prevention on a whole, on the season have some really positive numbers in other areas. How about WPA, win probability added? This isn't really a predictive stat in any way, but it measures impact in terms of their performance versus the leverage index. And as we can see here, Taylor Rogers is the only guy with a negative WPA, and it's pretty far negative compared to everybody else. If you pitch in high leverage situations and don't do well, that is going to send your WPA plummeting. If you pitch well in high leverage situations and you do well, you have a higher WPA. So Tyler Duffey being at the top doesn't surprise me too much, but Matt Wisler being second does, especially since he's a guy who hasn't pitched in the highest leverage of opportunities, but he's just been so good. And he also, another thing that's worth pointing out, he leads this bullpen group in innings pitched. So he's been he's had some more opportunity to compile WPA. So that's certainly worth keeping in mind. But that surprised me. And then GMLI, what the heck is this? Where am I pulling this stuff from? This is a leverage stat. So that's game leverage index. So this stat measures the average leverage index when you entered a game. Why is this interesting to look at? To me, if you wanted to get a sense of how Rocco Baldelli ranks these relievers in terms of how much he trusts them in terms of putting them in high leverage situations, this is a stat to look at. Regular leverage index that calculates a pitcher's entire leverage index of their outings, I don't think is as good because guys can pitch themselves into high leverage situations. And so that doesn't really, I think that kind of muddies the waters a bit. This only factors in what is the leverage index when they are put into a game. And as you can see here, Taylor Rogers is actually fourth now, behind Sergio Romo, Tyler Duffey, and Trevor May. So to answer that question of, who is sort of the closer, who is the top guy, who is the go-to guy in high leverage situations, it's not Taylor Rogers anymore. Maybe it will be by the time the postseason rolls around. Bullpens are such fluid pictures that, we saw last night Rogers had a clean inning in the eighth inning, and then Romo came in the ninth. Now, maybe, tomorrow, if there's a save type situation against the Tigers, maybe those two get flip-flopped, and they're going to try to get Rogers rolling to get back into that role for the postseason. I don't know. Because, again, it's not like Rogers has been garbage. He's had some bad outings. This is a weird short season. It's only been 17 and 2/3 innings anyway. So it'll be interesting to see how things go going forward. But we can say as of today, I don't think Taylor Rogers is going to be the guy getting the highest leverage innings. And I think that's all right. We're going to get a little bit more into my opinion in a minute here. I just wanted to get through this last number. Clean percentage. What the heck is that? Well, okay, you got me here. GMLI, the game enter leverage index, is a stat. Clean percentage. This is something I'm just pulling out here. This is the percentage of clean innings a relief pitcher throws. So basically, how many appearances have you had with no runs scored, not even earned runs, no runs at all? Or unearned runs are included in this. How many clean innings have you pitched? How many appearances have you had? What is your percentage of clean innings pitched? You can see here Caleb Thielbar is the top guy, but I'll scroll over a little bit. He's only had 14 outings, so it's a bit of a small sample size. We can say that about Cody Stashak as well. He's only had 9. But you can see the big guys. Who are the top big guys? And I don't think this is really any much of a surprise. Tyler Duffey's number 1 at 85%, Matt Wisler's number 2 at 81.3, and then Romo at 81. And then we can see Rogers is way down here at 63.2. I like this stat. It may be available somewhere. I don't know. I haven't found it. I like it because I think you can almost tie this number to fan confidence in a relief pitcher. If like Tyler Duffey, if a guy goes out and throws a scoreless inning 85% of the time, you're going to be pretty confident in that guy. As they slip down further, no matter what these kind of advanced metrics stay, it's all about runs. It's all about giving up runs at the end of the day. When you have a relief pitcher who's only going to be throwing an inning, maybe 2, you want that guy to throw a clean inning. That's the end goal. And sometimes when you have a guy like Jorge Alcala, who's pitched really well, But we can see here, that's another important thing to point out with this leverage index. You can see here Alcala had by far the lowest leverage index. So he also has by far the lowest clean percentage. However, maybe in some of these games where the leverage index was so low, either the Twins were getting blown out or the Twins were blowing out their opponent, you're less likely to do some aggressive moves to prevent a run. You're not going to bring the infield in, stuff like that. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind with Alcala in particular. I still don't think, as well as he's looked and as well as he's pitched, I still don't think he cracks the sort of A squad, is how I like to call things, or the bullpen. You have an A squad, you have a B squad. I think Alcala is on the B squad, but I think that says more about the Twins bullpen than it does about Jorge Alcala. This is just a damn good and deep bullpen. There isn't that big scary guy like Aroldis Chapman, who could just throw an immaculate inning, strike out 3 guys on 9 pitches at any given moment because he's that damn good. But as a whole, this bullpen is rock solid, and there's a lot of guys who are trustworthy. And since there are not going to be off days in between these playoff games, that's going to play such a bigger factor than it has in previous postseasons. When you have 2 games and then an off day or whatever, you can throw your big end game reliever 2-3 innings and know you got an off day tomorrow or the next day. That's not going to be the case, and it's going to be really interesting to see. I don't expect the first game of any series to be managed much differently. I think managers are going to throw the kitchen sink out in game 1, especially in these 3-game series, because that's just such a huge swing to be up 1-0 to be down 0-1. So I think that we're going to see very aggressive managing in game 1, but then in game 2, you want to go for it, especially if you're the team. Well, obviously you're facing elimination if you're the team down. If you're the team up, you want to stomp on that other team and just get them out of the way. However, there is going to be that thought process in the back of these managers' minds that, like, man, I still got to save something for tomorrow, So it's going to be really fascinating to see how all that's managed. All right, so let's go back to Fangraphs and take a look at leaderboards with relievers. We're going qualified relievers and their SIERA. If you want to read up on that on the Fangraphs library, basically it's like FIP, XFIP. It's an ERA predictor. So this stat is an advanced stat that tries to predict. Trevor May is 5th among 174 relief pitchers. So he has a 4.53 ERA, which is pretty ugly, but this metric shows, it shows a much better light of how well he's pitched. And Tyler Duffey is 14th. So the Twins have 2 of the top 14 guys out of 174 qualified relievers here. That's incredible. And, you look at some of these names, James Karinchak, I mean, he's the new hot on Cleveland. Everybody's kind of freaking out about how amazing his season's been. And yeah, he's struck out 47.4% of the batters he's faced. That's mind-blowing. He's going to be a weapon for Cleveland. I'm not trying to discredit that. But Tyler Duffey and Trevor May have a better SIERA than James Karinchak, and it's because he's got a 15.5 walk percentage for the most. Again, if you want to learn more about SIERA, there's you can go to the glossary here, and then pitching stats, you can dig around. Fangraphs, really great place to look at stats. But let's get to my thought process at the moment here. I loved when Fernando Rodney was the closer and Taylor Rogers was the setup guy, because you need to get to the 9th inning. Taylor Rogers was the best reliever that year. Fernando Rodney was the closer. He had a lot of closing experience. If you asked him to get 3 outs before the other team scored 3 runs, he could get the job done. He wasn't the best reliever on the team, but he was the closer. I personally don't mind that at all, because I would rather get to the 9th inning with your better relievers. And then if you lose at the end, you got there at least, then lose the game in the 6th, 7th, 8th inning. That happens a lot of the time when a B squad reliever, to go back to that term, maybe a starter goes short, and instead of going right to a May, a Duffey, a Rogers, your manager goes to one of the secondary guys, and the game's out of hand. That guy gives up a run or 2. all of a sudden, well, you don't have to worry about a save situation at that point because you're out of the game. So I like that situation. And I think Sergio Romo is kind of the perfect guy to have closing games right now. He's not, this guy's throwing like 85 miles per hour, just a bunch of frisbees and nasty changeups and sliders. I don't want to throw shade on him too much because he's still a very effective pitcher. But I don't think any other team in baseball is really going to have fear struck in them by Sergio Romo. He's not a super uncomfortable at bat like a guy like Chapman or somebody who throws 100 miles per hour. But I still feel comfortable with him getting the job done. That's what it's all. I don't care about an ugly save. And Sergio Romo last night had an ugly appearance. It was weird, but it was ugly. He loaded the bases in a 4-0 game, got out of it. Hey, that's a job done for me. It's all about just getting the win. But I would rather see, Tyler Duffey and Trevor May and Taylor Rogers in the earlier innings, maybe playing matchups since, Rogers is the lefty, get him a part of the lineup that has the most susceptible guys to lefties and vice versa with the other two. I do think if we're going to say who has been the best relief pitcher on the Twins this year, I think it's Tyler Duffey, and I don't think it's very close, even though, Sierra will tell us it's Trevor May. A lot of other things will tell us maybe it's Matt Wisler. But my thing with Matt Wisler is he's so dependent on the slider, you would have to consider that. So if you're facing in a lineup that's really bad against sliders, yeah, I could see him moving up in the pecking order, depending on that. If you're facing a team that could crush sliders, maybe he moves down then. So he's so dependent on that one pitch, you really have to factor that in to how you're going to use him. But I still think whenever you feel like the highest leverage opportunities are coming, that's where you want Tyler Duffey pitching. And to this point, across the entire season, that's almost what Rocco Baldelli's done. Sergio Romo's getting the top leverage index outings, and Tyler Duffey is second. They're neck and neck, basically. That's a very negligible difference. And then Trevor May, Taylor Rogers. So this is how Rocco Baldelli has used the bullpen so far across this whole short season here. And I think that's a pretty damn good formula going forward. Let me know what you think. How do you feel about the bullpen? Who do you trust the most? Who do you like closing games? I guess the last thing I would end with is this could all change tomorrow. That bullpens are the most fluid thing in baseball. I think you do have to ride with a hot guy. And, if Romo has another couple of shaky outings and Rogers starts dominating again, you can definitely flip on that short of a sample. In baseball, small sample sizes is like the thing that the drum everybody beats. I think to some degrees with bullpens, you can throw that out of the window and ride hot hands. So it's going to be really fun to see how this all shakes out. And this kind of stuff could really depend on how far the Twins go. This is the biggest, why I love bullpens is the biggest impact I think that a manager has on a game is how he deploys his bullpen. When he takes out the starting pitcher, how soon he does that, and then who he uses in his bullpen and when. That's the most influence, in my opinion, that a manager can have over a ball game. So I love looking at this stuff. So again, thanks for checking this out. We'll talk again soon.